Swaikap, and welcome back to this street photography POV video where I use the 35 DC Olympus rangefinder camera and the Olympus OM10, and this is the POV video from my previous video talking about the differences and personal experience trying rangefinder cameras for the first time. Here is just a set of images using up some of the remaining old film and just documenting some of the new COVID lockdowns and how the various restaurants were coping, and that they don't need to set up tables anymore and how they pack things at the back. But there'll be a few more POV shots that I would want to talk about, and I will see you again later, so enjoy the rest of this video. One thing for sure, when people say it's easier to frame, maybe it's certainly not, since you have a rangefinder that can see the larger frame, but you need to then look into the square section to see what the actual frame might look like. With SLR, it seems that what you see is what you get, and that just seems easier to me. If one is taking a little bit slower, then sure, the rangefinder can sort of let you see the wider picture and adjust more. But in this sort of photo, I kind of like pushed it down a little bit too low and then might not have the most optimum crop. But regardless, I think it's still interesting with the blurriness and movement of the bike itself. With this last roll, thought I would just sort of do a quick self-portrait, as one might call it, trying out with this reflection. And do like how with the last roll it doesn't fill the entire frame, and just the bleeding out texture on the top of the image just has this feeling of natural paperness, like it's torn, and on the right side of the paper image where the trees is just sort of floating away is something that I quite like.
You can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. Knowing someone that could level you with her eyes.
So I kind of finished the old roll and now just set up a new set of rolls, and using the same film simulation or film for both cameras, which is the Fuji Superia X-TRA 400. And so any differences would most likely be due to the glass itself of the camera, or maybe the aperture as well. And in this case, I decided to take a sample shot of these two ornaments, and we can see how the images may compare. I do pay attention to the 35DC, that it was shot at 16th aperture, since it was very bright, and so I set the OM10 to be at aperture 16 as well, just so that the aperture may be the same and we can sort of see how the contrast is different between the two. Though I have my suspicion that maybe the time that I was able to take the shots, the sun might have sort of shifted a little bit. I put away my action camera for this duration, so it will only be photos, but all I can sort of share for now is that the OM10 is pretty much shot at zone focusing at f11, and using the 28mm I get a pretty wide depth of field for the zone focus. Was curious to see again the differences between the two glass and the focal length difference between 35 and 28, and it just seems that the 28mm might have a little bit more contrast again, but do let me know what you think. But I just saw this sort of large tree, and I don't know if it's a single tree or just multiple trees, but just how large it looked in comparison to all of the buildings in the background sort of made this scene that I quite like. And there's like a lot of sun hitting onto the tree itself, giving sort of a lot of depth in sort of highlights and shadows. So I wanted to sort of see and compare between these two cameras itself. In the end, the weather was a little bit too hot for me, so I called it a day, and now we're on day 2 and had some homemade bread with cinnamon and just went out for another walk. Before I could record anything, one of these sort of high-end taxis came around. So in one of my routes, went to a local cafe shop, and because it's sort of a lockdown and people couldn't stay inside to drink, they set up these plastic barriers just to split the cafe from one area to another. And I thought it's still good to just document how different shops handle their own lockdowns. So I basically was having something they call a Three Musketeers, which is basically a shot of coffee and a little bit of chocolate and mint as well. So there's just the 3 different ingredients combined together. So it's quite refreshing. Don't need any milk or sugar or any of that other stuff. Another household, and there have been a lot of these types of houses where they would open up their gates and set up their own shops to sell food to people, and this is just one of those shops. As the COVID thing has risen, And I haven't tried this place before, but certainly something I would want to try in the future. They also seem to have a service to repair and replace headlights of various cars as well, which I find to be very interesting. These sets of photos happened very quickly. As I was walking in, I saw the truck guy sort of slowly moving up to the front of the window, and I thought it would be a very interesting photo to sort of capture as his head is sticking out. And it became even more interesting that I think he brought his kid along as well, and just sort of like a dad taking his son to work kind of day. And right as I was walking along, there's another guy chilling at the back of the truck, and this was also shot from the hip, zone focusing, and I think it came out quite alright. I really liked how the light is just shining on the lady's head as she's trying to purchase some fruits, and it seems to be durian season, so there's just a lot of durians during these times, and it's just pretty nice to just see how popular it is and just how many people are just waiting in line to purchase it. Another shot here, and I stick around to sort of try to work the scene just a little bit more. And this is one of the car repair shops that I've been to, and it seems that they have opened a cafe as a way to sort of have another source of income. And so they opened the doors of the front of the shop here, which from my memory they normally don't, and then set up this cafe shop. I came with a friend the other day, and in this area used to have many shops and restaurants just selling food, and now it's almost all gone. This was still a Sunday, and that's why all of the shops are closed on this day. But when I came in on another day, still a lot of shops were closed off and only a few remain here. And in this shot, I sort of just waited for someone to walk by and had them sort of walking gesture actively, and he sort of framed within the door, and I think that came out okay. Now there's another chance that some of the shops might have moved over here, but from what I've seen, the shops that have closed down are not in this new location that is sort of down the road a couple of blocks, and this place might get a little bit more attention in the near future. It really depends on which condominium people are living at, and either one of these places might attract different types of people. Once again, this is a Sunday, so all of the shops or most of it are closed, and just want to sort of quickly take a few shots of how they set up all of the tables during closing hours. So switching it up again to the 35 DC, those previous shots were all with the OM10 with a mixture of zone focusing and adjusting aperture based on if I was indoors or outdoors. But now it's just having to try to manual focus with this camera, and it's still a little bit hard when it's objects or people, subjects far away. It's still a little bit hard to sort of nail focus, and since it's an pretty much automatic kind of camera that sets the aperture and shutter speed for you, if things get too dark, and so it might be cause some motion blur. But if it's bright enough, then don't need to be too accurate, and then trust the sort of f4, f8, 16 to sort of have a larger zone of focus instead. But in any case, just try to sort of snap like moments that I sort of like, and in this case just saw this cute dog hanging out with their owners and how it seems to be curious with the camera that I'm holding. I don't exactly know what attracted me to this scene, whether it's just a combination of the motorcycle driver and the police officer, and that someone is trying to cross the road. That made me feel like there's some potential in it. But even with such a bright scene like this, it seems that the shutter speed was not fast enough to even sort of stop the motion of these cars. And stop, I mean by something that might be faster than 1/250 a second, or maybe 1/500th of a second. In this case, it's still maybe not bright enough for this camera, so I stick around to take a few more shots and just see what kind of poses this man trying to cross the road is sort of making, and then sort of snap a few more pictures as he walked through. But after 3 shots, I think I sort of had enough and then decided to move on. In the end, I felt that maybe the first image might still be the best of them all, just having the car help frame the various people in the shot might make it a little bit more interesting. This one was a faster one that had very little time to react, and this is one of those things where I was trying to see and manual focus, but since the focusing square is dead center, I cannot see the man himself if he's in focus, and if he kept on walking, he would just walk straight past me and I would have missed the shot, so I just had to take it. I felt if I were using the OM10 and I can see the SLR style and the entire frame and see when he becomes in focus, even though he might be on the edge of the screen, I would have been able to sort of manually focus and capture him better. In any case, I ended the session just going out to play a little bit of tennis, and there's still a couple people out still doing a little bit of sports. And there was some nice light in the skies that I tried to capture, though the results did not impress me too much. Maybe it's overblown, or that I'll need to sort of re-edit them a little bit later on. But I wanted to just show like the raw outcome of the images without any edits. So now we're on day number 3 and just saw this scene, how the light just was shining into the building, and I thought it would make a nice photo with the contrast and everything. But when I got the photo out, it seems super desaturated, or maybe it's just too bright, and this might be one of those photos where I'll have to re-edit and pull everything down again to bring back the contrast a little bit more. This guy, and just the way that he's sitting and relaxing, and then there was just a lot of these kinds of objects framing him, and wanted to try to capture it, though it still felt like I missed focus on him, even though it's sort of a bright day and I should have a little bit more aperture to give me a wider depth of field. But I'm not sure what exactly happened. I think it's just going to have to be practice to get better later. Something interesting I noticed after a while here was that I couldn't really shoot from the hip, even though I was using a 35mm. When I was using the 28, I'm a little bit more comfortable, and I felt like it's not only because I was using the 28 on the OM10 much longer, but that I was using the Fuji 18mm f2 as well, and the focal length equivalent was at 28, and I guess that sort of gave me a little bit more confidence to shoot from the hip. But strangely enough, when I was shooting with the 35 here, my mind switched over to the Fuji 35mm, and with the crop sensor it becomes a 50mm, which gave me the impression that I'm going to be more tight than what reality is. And I thought it was an interesting mindset that I will need to overcome as I continue to shoot with a 35. walking through the same construction area once again, and this time the doors were open because a truck had to come through, and saw this man carrying this large pipe, and there's a rare opportunity to sort of try to capture the kind of construction that's going on inside. Sadly, the image came out a little bit too blurred for my liking, though it is quite curious to me whether this can still be a good thing, or is it an absolute miss, in the sense that the person himself is framed within the various colors, like the orange pipe coming down at an angle framing him up, and his helmet sort of appearing bright orange over the pipe, and we couldn't really see his face. I don't know if maybe it's other photographers that may appreciate this image, even though there's quite a lot of movement to it and that is not sharp. But with the next image that came along, quite happy with this one. Just sort of try to pre-focus him, and then as he comes closer, then I know to sort of focus closer and closer until I took the shot. And I think this one came out better this time around, and we get a little bit of like a panning motion blur in the background as I try to pan and follow his movement, and even better that he's sort of actually looking at the camera, though the framing itself might have been a miss a little bit, and still getting used to and not able to sort of frame with the rangefinder, since I was focused on trying to keep focus on the actual person.
Perfect freedom. Freedom? Perfect freedom. A world in which you have no restriction. Is this really freedom? Yes, this is what it is. However, this world has nothing. Unless I do something? Right. Unless you do or think of something.
Getting late as I was trying to sort of find a couple more images, and this lady who was sort of managing one of the food drink stalls was sort of hanging out around, and then asked if she wanted me to take her photo, and well, I can't decline. A generous offer, and so just tried to take some shots of her, though it was quite dark, and I think this one came out alright, expecting the orange light to sort of expose her a little bit better, though it came out maybe a little bit too saturated as well, and maybe that's just the nature of the film. But there's just a lot of blues as well, just a lot of colors going around. I can't really point out like what it is exactly, just that an interesting result. Moving on, found another sort of durian stand, and then tried to sort of get around to sort of depict the kind of lines that people are waiting to get their fresh durian. And as I was trying to focus, and since this was pretty late already, I'm pretty much at f1.7 at 1/15 of a second at this point, with some of the darker shots. And so with this man sort of leaning forward, I thought this was going to be the best time to take the shots before he sort of maybe leans back again, and then it becomes like a normal thing. Walking past this shop multiple times, they are mostly busy and working, so finding the shop empty and cleaned out like this seems like a rare occasion, and try to sort of capture this moment as best I can to show as much as I can. Again, another day where the previous day we saw a lot of fruit stands right here selling, so now there's no one here, so wanted to sort of take a shot to just contrast the difference a scene can make. Walking back again, I thought I would take a few more shots of this nice lady, and she was happy to comply. And when I gave her the photo, she was still happy with it. I personally was not too happy with it, though it felt a little bit too dark, even though the reason for it seems to be that the camera was exposing for the highlights, even though I tried to use the exposure button to expose for the face and then reframe the camera, and it will certainly be something that I'll try to keep in mind in the future. But for now, it's just another reason that I know for myself that I'll need to hopefully quote-unquote upgrade to a full manual camera, and the goal is to get one of those OM1s or OM2s where the shutter speed dial is actually on the mount of the camera, and I really like that design choice, since with the left hand itself I can set the shutter speed, focus, and change the aperture all with one hand, and then the right hand can just focus on holding the camera, clicking on the shutter to take a picture, and moving the film forward. And with that, I went into a convenience store to buy something to drink, and just saw this mother holding her child, and I just sort of saw all of the yellows together and thought it might make a nice scene. Her walking forward a little bit gives like a little bit of motion and life into the scene, and I think it came out okay. And with today that things got dark, I was not able to capture many photos, even though some of the moments I felt was quite bright, and I spoke about it in the previous video. But in this scene, just went for that classic film vlogger that takes pictures of sort of homes with lights shining on it. At least that's how I felt, and a couple of other old famous photographers do that. So this one, the shot was actually taken, but with the result itself, it was very much underexposed and did not come out the way that I expected at all. Though with the next shot, this came out a little bit better, and there was certainly much more light here indeed. And I am just starting to notice just how the two buildings on the top left hand side, just very blue, both of them are at an angle, like coming together. I don't know why, there's just something about the composition that I think works well, maybe. And I think that is all there is to this POV vlog. It's certainly one of the longer ones, since I was using up 2 rolls of film plus another half roll of film, trying to compare and see the differences between using a SLR and rangefinder style. And so to my conclusion, it's really not something that I need per se. When I keep hearing from different like YouTubers and vloggers, is there's certainly a feeling of pressure to get it, because maybe it's because of the brand from Leica itself, or that it's the hype that it makes one a better photographer, to slow down even more compared to the SLR style, or the advertisements of its natural beauty compared to SLR. I really don't know what it is, and there can be so many more reasons to it. But when I do this walk for myself and try it out for myself, I really don't see a difference in it. And with the Olympus 35DC, seeing that it really suffers under shooting in low light situations, stopping me from actually taking the shot, it's certainly a detriment to my photography, I think. If I could in the future get another rangefinder camera, then maybe I'm more open to try again. But with what I have, I think I'll stick with the Olympus OM10 and can switch around between the 50 f1.8 and the 28 f2.8 that I currently have, and I can just shoot zone focus or full manual focus whenever I want. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video as well, and let me know what your thoughts between rangefinder and SLR as well. Reason why you maybe choose rangefinder over SLR based on your style of photography or feeling of shooting photography, and what you think of the photos as well. I'm all open to any suggestions or criticism. With that said, hope you all have a nice day. Bye for now.